Smeagol belonged to the reputable family of the stern and wise matriarch. He spent the early years of his life living with his extended family during the Watchful Peace when Sauron was in the east. He had some amount of education in lore, as during his youth he had learned of the events concerning the War of the Last Alliance against Sauron. He also knew the riddle game and riddles that were known to their cousins in the Shire. Around the year third age 2463 on his birthday, his friend and close relative Diggle offered him a cheap present. Later that day, they went boating in the Gladden fields, and as Smeagol was nosing at the banks, Diggle was pulled into the water by a large fish and found a gold ring. Smeagol demanded the ring as a birthday present and strangled Diggle when he refused, and hid his body. Smeagol became the fourth ring bearer after Sauron, Isildur, and Diggle. After this event, he returned home and understood he was invisible. He kept his treasure a secret and used it in malicious ways, to see and hear secrets and hurtful things, and was corrupted further by the ring. Soon he became unpopular and his peers avoided him. They often cursed and kicked him, and he bit their feet. Becoming a loner, he muttered to himself and gurgled in his throat, for which they called him Gollum, and he survived by stealing. Eventually, even his grandmother, desiring peace, banished him from their family and Hobbit Hall. Sad for the hard world, he wandered in loneliness up the river and followed the stream. He spent time by some deep pools, aided by the invisibility of the ring. He caught fish, which he ate raw. Sometime later, eventually forgotten by him, sun started to scorch his skin and eyes, and as he looked up, he noticed the misty mountains from which the stream ran down. He decided to go there, in the desirable darkness, safe from the scorching sun, with more roots and secrets to discover there. Indeed, by night he climbed up the highlands and warmed into the little cave out of which the stream flowed. The ring's malignant influence twisted his hobbit body and mind and prolonged his life far beyond its natural limits. The murder of Diggle haunted him, and as a psychological defense, he repeated to it that it turned up to him so as to be his birthday present and his precious. Gollum lived longer than any other hobbit could, and for over 400 years he managed to live in his cave on raw fish which he caught from his small raft, and goblins from the nearby goblin town. In later years, he found hobbit and elven food repulsive. The ring's corrupting influence, as well as centuries of isolation in the Mist Mountains, took a deep toll on him both physically and mentally. He became disfigured and grotesque in appearance, and by the time he met the hobbit Bilbo Baggins, he was afflicted with almost complete madness. In July 3rd Age 2941, during the quest of Erebor, Bilbo stumbled upon the subterranean lake on which Gollum lived and found the ring. Gollum had lost the ring in the network of caves leading to the lake, though in fact it is more proper to say that the ring abandoned Gollum, for it was known to have a will of its own. As Gandalf said later, the necromancer was becoming more powerful, and it was good time for the ring to change hands and get back to Sauron. While he was unaware of his loss, he met Bilbo Baggins, who was lost, and it's possible that Gollum's own part of his mind was pleased to hear again a kindly voice that reminded him of the outside world, but this also made his evil part angrier. After the famous riddle game, Gollum refused to show Bilbo the promised way out and plotted to murder him. When he went to get his birthday present, however, he found that it was gone. He suddenly realized the answer to Bilbo's last riddle, "What have I got in my pocket?" and became furious. Bilbo inadvertently stumbled across the ring's power of invisibility as he ran, allowing him to follow Gollum to the entrance of the cave. There, Bilbo at first thought to kill Gollum, but was overcome with pity, so he jumped over him to escape. As Bilbo ran, Gollum cried out, "Thief! Thief! Baggins! We hate it forever!" He stayed 2 more years in the mountains, although he was disgusted by the empty night, nasty furtive eating, and resentful remembering. He hated darkness, light, and the ring most of all, but his addiction to it was so great that he overcame his hatred and fear of the light and the orcs. He left and pursued Bilbo, but the trail was cold. Hiding from the sun and moon, quickly and silently he moved by night, hunting small creatures. As the ring was no longer devouring him, he was a bit revived and new food and air made him stronger. He followed Bilbo's trail through Mirkwood and even reached Esgaroth and Dale. Spying on the man of Dale, he learned more about the thief and where he was from. Then apparently he decided to turn back and go west to find the thief, again through Mirkwood. The elves of Mirkwood, apparently cooperating with Gandalf, tracked him. His presence terrified the beasts and birds as he ate eggs and the young animals from nests and holes. He even broke into houses and approached cradles of the babies of the woodman who spoke about a blood-drinking ghost until he reached again the great river. Then for some reason, as the wood elves say, he turned southwards and his traces were lost. And then Gandalf neglected the matter because he had much else to think at that time, which was a great mistake because it was the year when Sauron declared himself openly and Gollum turned towards Mordor. 30 years later, he reached the confines of Mordor and met Shelob, who would help him take this revenge. As he ventured into Mordor, he was captured by Sauron, and for the next years he was forced to reveal what he knew about the ring. Thus, Sauron's spies learned from him that the One Ring was found, and the names Shire and Hobbits. Meanwhile, Gandalf suspected that Bilbo's ring was one of the rings of power and changed his plans to resume his search of Gollum, but that was in vain as his tracks had been too old now, and Gollum was in Mordor. By Third Age 2017, Gollum was set free, only to be caught at least by Aragorn, who after many perils turned him over to Gandalf. Gollum whined and cringed and licked his wounded hands and fingers. The wizard attempted to interrogate him, and among Gollum's growling, snorting, curses and lies, Gandalf endured many weary days. He had to threaten him with fire and managed to learn of the story he didn't know bit by bit, but Gollum didn't say much after the departure of Bilbo as he feared Mordor more. Gollum felt misunderstood and ill-treated, exiled into a hole and then robbed, and spoke about revenge thanks to his new friends. He placed him in the care of the Sylvan Elves, living in Thranduil's woodland realm of Mirkwood. In June of Third Age 3018, orcs raided the Elves of Mirkwood, allowing Gollum to escape. He resumed his search of the ring and presumably he decided to hide into Moria in August in order to lose his pursuers, the elves and the servants of Sauron. However, he couldn't open the doors of Durin from the inside, so didn't exit into Eriador to reach the Shire. Presumably, he stayed there for months, until the Fellowship of the Ring entered Moria from the door. Then Gollum picked up the trail of the new ring-bearer, Frodo Baggins, as they traveled through Moria. 2 days later, Gandalf was lost while fighting a Balrog and breaking the bridge of Khazad Dûm. It's unknown how he crossed the chasm or the bridge, but he came with them to Lothlorien without their knowing. Hiding somewhere around the shores of Anduin, Gollum spied their departure and floating on a log, followed their boats down Anduin to Rauros. He pursued Frodo and Sam across the Emin Muil when they struck out on their own towards Mordor. Gollum followed them, but after a confrontation in which he bit and nearly strangled Sam, Frodo subdued him. Frodo tied an elvish rope around Gollum's ankle for a leash, but the mere touch of the rope pained him. Taking pity on the wretched creature, Frodo made Gollum swear to help them. Agreeing to the oath, Gollum swore by the Precious itself and Frodo released him. The unlikely company, guided by Gollum, made their way to Black Gate, the entrance of Mordor. Frodo's kindness brought out the Smeagol personality and he made at least some effort to keep his promise. The two had a strange sort of bond from both having been ring-bearers. In Gollum, Frodo saw his possible future and so wanted to save him so he could save himself. Gollum also feared Frodo and also thought that helping him would deprive Sauron of the ring. When the Black Gate was reached and found to be well guarded, Gollum convinced them not to go that way, saying that they would be caught and Sauron would regain the ring. Gollum said he would lead them south, where he knew of another entrance into Mordor. Frodo and Sam were caught by Faramir, and Gollum followed them. When Frodo allowed Faramir to briefly take Smeagol prisoner, however, he felt betrayed, allowing the Gollum personality to take control. Faramir found out that the place Gollum was taking them was called Cirith Ungol. He then warned Frodo and Sam of the evil of that place. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum left Faramir and began crossing the pass of the Cirith Ungol in the border mountains of the Ephel Duath. On 11 March, Gollum visited the great spider Shelob because he was planning to betray the hobbits to get the ring for himself. When he returned, the hobbits were asleep. The sight of Frodo sleeping nearly moved Gollum to repent. However, Sam woke up and spoke harshly to Gollum, and all hope of redemption was lost. Gollum followed through with his plan and led Frodo and Sam into Shelob's lair. Just as Frodo warned him, Gollum's betrayal of his oath ultimately led to his undoing, for Frodo and Sam escaped from Shelob's lair and came against all odds to the volcano Orodruin, or Mount Doom. Gollum followed them all the way, seeking a chance to surprise them and take the ring. When Frodo and Sam had almost reached their destination, he attacked but failed to get the ring. Sam, who had hated Gollum on sight, tried to bring himself to kill him, but relented out of sheer pity and disgust, turning his back on the beaten creature. Moments later, Frodo was standing on the edge of the Crack of Doom, but unwilling to destroy the ring, claimed it for himself and put it on. Then Gollum attacked again. The two fought while Frodo was invisible, and finally Gollum bit off Frodo's finger. Here Frodo's kindness, sparing Gollum's life, was rewarded, for Gollum then teetered on the edge of the great pit, lost his balance and fell in, taking the ring and finger with him with a last cry of precious. Had Gollum not lived to play this final part, there would have been a good chance that Sauron would have regained the ring, as he knew where Frodo was as soon as he put the ring on. Smeagol was a hobbit, but he spent long centuries in darkness and damp thanks to the ring, and influenced by its evil power. It's possible that thanks to his hardy hobbitish nature that he was not reduced to a wraith. However, he was reduced to a small, extremely thin and weary person with scrawny neck, pale skin, flat feet, long thin hands with clammy fingers, and large pale eyes that seemed to glow. His sense of sight, as well as his hearing and smelling, were very good due to the time he spent underground. He could move and climb silently like a spider, and although he had only 6 teeth left, he could give deep bites, even able to bite off Frodo's finger. Smeagol was quick and strong, the most inquisitive and curious-minded of his community. He was interested in roots and beginnings. He owed his name to his interest in roots and deep pools. He dove, burrowed, and tunneled under trees, plants, and mounds. He tended to neglect anything that was higher, like the flowers, the trees, and looking at the hills. During his centuries of loneliness and under the ring's influence, he developed a sort of multiple personality. His evil personality was a slave to the ring and would kill for it, overwhelming his former self, who still vaguely remembered things like friendship and love. Not having anyone else to speak to, he often quarreled with himself. Gollum both loved and hated the ring and himself. He often referred both to the ring and himself as my precious, perhaps confusing the two entitles. Years later, Samwise Gamgee would name the good personality Slinker and the bad personality Stinker. Other aspect of the ring's corruption was the aversion to all living creatures, especially the elves and all things elven. The elven robe burned his skin, and lembas tasted like dust to him and choked him. Smeagol, as a hobbit, was perhaps good at heart, but he was relatively greedy and mean. Bilbo was corrupted far more slowly by the ring, because his adventures with it began with an act of mercy, while Gollum began his with murder.